Welcome to the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at tonight's 9-game NBA slate, and it's an ugly one. But there are a lot of solid contests out there on both sides for GPPs, so it's going to get us to play anyway.
Yeah, I really liked yesterday's slate, and today I kind of feel the opposite. I mean, obviously there's good plays and values and all that stuff, especially heading towards the end of the season, but it's an ugly one. A lot of low point totals for these games tonight.
Yeah, I mean, usually we've been used to games, most games on every night to be kind of over 200 for the most part, with maybe a couple, stray dogs there, but tonight, not so much. New Orleans Spurs, 198, Knicks Dallas, 199, Toronto Atlanta, 199. And then also for a Warriors game, 202 is a low total. And that spread dropped from 5 to 4 right now. And it's just sitting at 202.
Right.
So it's a little concerning. Also, Denver, Memphis, 202. So it's not a particularly intriguing slate, but it's one you can be diverse in.
And as we've seen, some of these teams, they haven't necessarily given up, but they've given up. I mean, there's a lot of guys out for the season now. So some of these games are pretty just ugly in terms of the players you have to sift through. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for, right?
It is. Looking up top, I mean, this is where you're kind of going to be looking for your core guys, and that's Sacramento, Washington, 217 with a 2-point spread. Minnesota, LA, the Clippers, LA, not the Lakers. 5.5 point spread sitting at 212. And then my favorite game of the night, Milwaukee and Phoenix, 7-point spread sitting at 211. Really, I think those are my three games that I could just maybe build a lineup around between just those 3 or 6 teams there.
Yeah, especially that Milwaukee Phoenix games. It has some nice players that have sort of found their roles, and obviously Giannis, who's priced high, but I mean he's in a good spot tonight. So yeah, definitely an intriguing game.
Yeah, I mean you're looking at a couple blowout games. Miami 108 away total there, but a 10-point spread. The Spurs are favored by 19 points. So
we had a good laugh about that one before the show. I mean, I don't know how you can really trust players in that game tonight. There is some decent value on the New Orleans side, but that's a big one. That's a big spread.
And I think people are still going to be drawn to it because you're looking at New Orleans and they only have 9 healthy bodies out there right now. So
right.
It's like they have to score 89 points to reach that total, and it's coming from such concentrated players, but I still think it's a situation I'll just fade altogether.
I mean, again, I think sometimes we can go contrarian and against the Vegas lines, but when it's that big, it's a little tough to sort of bank on the premium guys for the Spurs tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And Kawhi looking probable back. They'll take Aldridge usage down a little bit, so that's something to just keep an eye on. But those 3 top games are just kind of. This is almost like a 3-game slate to me.
I mean, there's definitely guys to consider, but I'm with you in terms of roster construction. You want to get pieces of that sort of the Wizards-Kings game. I think that could be really essential to how things shake out in tournaments tonight.
Yeah. We'll break that down by position here, and starting with point guard. A lot of injury concerns to look at. You're looking at Drew Holiday out for the remainder of the season. I mean, the guy just a tough break. I mean, he can never seem to be healthy. Fractured his orbital bone there. So Tim Frazier and Tony Douglas going to be the guys in the backcourt that see, pretty much all the usage. And, I mean, they're even going to be minutes regardless of the blowout. So you can take a look at them. I won't be getting too crazy, but I don't think they're terrible plays.
Yeah, Frazier actually popped up in our optimizer, and he is pretty intriguing for tournaments. I think if you're looking to sort of fill out a roster spot and you need a value guy, he's all right, but not someone you want to be He's not Andrew Nicholson, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't tune in yesterday, yeah, Russell was all over Andrew Nicholson. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, obviously the Westbrook news and everything, but he kind of evened that out a little bit. But yeah, pretty happy with my A10 brother.
Oh man. Look at some other injury concerns. Rajon Rondo is probable for tonight's game, but still the Kings are going to be in the midst of resting guys down the stretch here. He's been dealing with some kind of just nagging issues, but still keep an eye on that. Kyle Lowry, a true questionable tag, was limited at shooting round, and he's kind of looked limited really over the last week or so.
Yeah, both in the games and the box score. I think you can sometimes see when the injuries are actually affecting the players. So that's one to keep an eye on there. Even if he does play, maybe you want to fade him anyway.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, I mean, on the court, I mean, he's still only shooting 26% over the last 4 games, and that hasn't been pretty. Could be just banged up, a little bit tired down the stretch here. So there's enough point guards on the slate to kind of just push Lowry out of the way.
Right, definitely.
Goran Dragic, he's another one questionable tonight. And you're kind of wondering if a matchup against the Lakers tilts him into the other move of just sitting him and just letting Josh Richardson kind of run the show there.
Right. Again, the play in the matchup is fine, but with that injury considered and the big spread, might be something to avoid.
Yep. Deron Williams, he's the other one. You're looking basically at the same situation you've been dealing with the last few games. Harris, Felton, Barea, all great plays. I think cash games, all 3 are pretty safe. I'm reserving Barea just a little bit more for GPPs because if he gets you 25 points, you're likely going to be getting that cheaper from Harris just a little bit down the road.
Definitely agree.
But, I mean, outside of that, you got your top options. Curry sitting up top, John Wall, Chris Paul. Wall and Paul, both in great matchups. That kind of pushes Curry out of the way for me, not really touching him in a matchup on the road against Utah at that price.
We really have a great opportunity to make a Paul Wall reference right now, but we're not going to do that because this is the professional show. Steph Curry's been struggling a little bit against Utah this year. Obviously, he's matchup proof, but I think tonight might be a night where you kind of pivot onto Wall.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking. Curry still has a nice 50-point upside against even a Utah team, but I don't see him hitting that tonight, and I also just don't see him paying off that 10K price tag for what you want. Paul and Wall, on the other hand, that's a different story.
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking at those guys and, their equal usage and better matchups.
Right, and I think Wall's ceiling is extended tonight. I mean, that last matchup, a few guys were out, so you can't really take that into account for Sacramento, but I do think he has 55, 60 fantasy point upside tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, mentioning that last game, Bradley Beal and Otto Porter were out, and it was basically the Gortat and Wall show, both combining for over 100 points combined, so fantasy points, no real points. But, yeah, I mean, that's the situation. So if you're looking and cruising through box scores and kind of looking to see what happened that game, they were the 2 offensive machines while everyone else was out.
Right.
So are you ranking Wall over Paul tonight?
Yeah, I do like Wall over Paul, but they're in the same tier, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you there. Looking a little bit cheaper. Kind of, there's a couple range guys in that mid tier that I like, and Brandon Knight. It's not the most appealing matchup going against Milwaukee, who's been tough against point guards this season. But Brandon Knight's been playing well. You got the little revenge game factor. At that price tag, still is remotely cheap in comparison to other point guards tonight. I don't hate Knight.
Yeah, and Rubio will probably – I think he's going to be a little higher owned tonight just because of how the slate shakes out. So that might be a nice pivot or sort of match up with him. I like both of those guys tonight.
Yeah. I mean, the Clippers ranked 20th in efficiency this month against point guards, and I think still a matchup against Chris Paul, who's always been kind of the dominant defender of point guards, I guess you could say, he just kind of gives that edge that scares people off of opposing point guards. I'm not going to be too quick to shake away Ricky Rubio tonight from lineups.
Right.
I mean, he's had decent games against the Clippers this season, and basically under 30 minutes in both. And, if he gets up over that, I'll look for Rubio to put up that 35, 40 fantasy points.
Right. I think he's a cash game play for sure. And I do think he has a little tournament upside as well.
Yeah. Here's where we kind of get a little bit drier is there's not so many guys below that sit in that 5 to 6K range. You have Darren Collison. I think he's kind of your top option. Been consistent still, not priced entirely too high in a high total game. I think he's your safer guy in that 5,000 range.
Agree. Yeah, him and Berea are kind of guys that I'm looking at in that tier. I have trouble trusting Moutier at this point. I mean, maybe YOLO tournament lineup, but I wouldn't feel comfortable having him in more than a few lineups.
Yeah, and to mention Moody, I mean the minutes have been so up and down, and that really ties into Augustine. When Moody has been
Mhm.
hot, as he was last game, he stayed in, played over 30. The down games, it was Augustine who came in. So you're kind of banking on a guy whoever's going to have the hot hand, and it's a decent matchup. So um, I still think I'd rather roll with Moutier.
That's over Augustine.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fair. I do like that discount though. I think that's if I'm taking a shot, I might go with him. But yeah, Moutier obviously the higher upside.
yeah. JJ Barea, he's the guy to mention. I think he has the highest upside out of him and Harris. I mean, obviously we've seen it. Everyone's kind of healthy in that backcourt now outside of Duran, so you're not going to see him play over 30 minutes, but you're still going to see him right around 27, which is a solid spot.
Right. Yeah, that's a solid group. And then I think Augustine and then Jose Calderon's pretty intriguing. Obviously that upside isn't huge, but a lot of usage out tonight, and I think he could be in a decent matchup against Dallas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Calderon's been a little bit matchup dependent. He's played well in solid spots. You look at the games where he went off: Chicago, New Orleans, um, the Lakers, Phoenix. Those are all teams that have struggled against point guards this season, and the matchup's not too tough tonight either.
Right.
Jordan Farmar, he's a guy who is on my radar for tonight. He's not available in the FanDuel pool, but he is on DK, averaging 25 minutes over the last 4 games. And I mean, he's been solid in 3 of the 4, and then 2 of those came against San Antonio. And I never expect anyone to be solid against San Antonio, but he was for one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then sort of, I'll be interested how the Pelicans sort of play this tonight. Even if they get down big, are they just going to sort of run their regular rotations the entire game? So I mean, I think Tim Frazier's in play as a punt guy, but as we talked about before, it's really tough to truly trust anyone's usage tonight in that game.
Yeah. And I think Farmar is just the far more safer option.
Yeah.
I think Frazier, if he gets out there and plays 28 plus minutes and is playing against a San Antonio bench that's for the most part of that game, maybe. But I still think it's a situation they're not really going to be attacking too much.
Right. Yeah. Farmer's definitely the better option there.
Yeah. So really looking at John Wall, Chris Paul, Rubio, Knight, and then looking at Collison, the Dallas backcourt for the most part.
Right.
And then Calderon for a cheap play.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to shooting guard, and I mean, I guess the only injury news to look at is Kobe Bryant. He's listed as questionable. He said he was going to try and play each game down the stretch here, so we'll see if that's the case. And they're going to need Kobe out there to even keep this one within 15.
I heard his game against Utah was one of the worst he had in his entire career.
Yeah, he was like minus 40 something. I don't know. It was up there.
One for 11 in 28 minutes. That's rough, man.
Yeah, definitely. But outside of that, there's not much injury concerns to look at. Obviously, the Chandler Parsons news bumps up Wesley Matthews and Felton. They've both been seeing solid minutes. Matthews moved over to the 3. But really looking up top, I mean, it's tough to pay up for a lot of these guys. You're looking at Dwayne Wade coming off a monster game. When Dragic sat, I don't think the minutes will be there tonight against this Lakers team. I think he's a pretty easy fade.
Yeah, I just look at this and I say we need some Buddy Hield at the shooting guard position for next year. Come on, buddy, save the position. But yeah, I don't know that I necessarily like DeRozan tonight. I think he might get a lot of usage if Lowry's out. He's an all right play, but not necessarily someone I'm investing a ton in.
Yeah, that's a good point. If Lowry sits, DeRozan kind of shifts over and becomes a better option, but tougher matchup against Atlanta.
Yeah.
I think Middleton's my top option going up against Phoenix, and he'll get the ball rolling with these Bucks plays.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If you're going Giannis, maybe throw Middleton in there or maybe play him as an island play as well. Good matchup. I think, again, we talked about we like that game. So And Booker, like Devin Booker as well, tougher matchup, but I think his usage is pretty solidified at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking, at games before. I consider the Boston matchup pretty tough, and yeah, he only shot 8 of 20, 40%, but still put up 33 fantasy points, and I think the floor is really consistent with him. And yeah, Milwaukee's not the most ideal matchup, but the guy's going to put up 20 shot attempts a game, and he's going to hit 40% of them. So
Right.
I don't mind him at all.
Definitely.
Look a little bit cheaper. Bradley Beal, he's in the matchup, a dream matchup tonight, but he's just not a consistent player. And it's just his usage is so up and down. I mean, 8 shot attempts in 18, then 5 and 16. It's just you never know with him. And
Right.
I can't trust this guy in cash as good as the matchup is.
Right. And again, he kind of defines the slate for me. Like there's just a lot of guys like this tonight where it's like, all right, matchup's good, but I don't really love it. I'm not in love with playing him. I mean, I think I'd rather just play Otto Porter, but maybe I think they're both decent options.
Yeah. Looking at Andrew Wiggins and Levine, it's not the most ideal matchup, but I don't mind either just because the minutes that have been out there. This is expected to be a pretty close game, and both have produced against the Clippers this season. I think both are going to be in play for me in all formats, but kind of more secondary options in comparison to Towns and Rubio.
Definitely agree. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get a piece of that team, that's sort of a unique way to do it.
Yeah. I don't think I think people are going to be drawn to Towns, and then I think you're going to get a good mix of Levine, Wiggins, and Rubio. And I think 2 of the 3 are going to come out really on top, and one's going to be a little bit down, but I'm not quite sure who that's going to be yet.
Right.
So looking cheaper, you got Wesley Matthews, who's seen heavy minutes. Not a big high ceiling guy. I still don't even think he is, even with Parsons out, because he's kind of come back down to earth a little bit. But cash game wise, I don't expect him to kill lineups tonight. I think he's going to be around that 23 to 25 range for floor, and he definitely has fantasy point upside, in the low 30s. But it's tough for me seeing him getting that tonight.
Yeah, with Williams out, I do like his price for cash. And you had mentioned Josh Richardson as a guy you like who has a pretty decent matchup tonight.
Yeah, and I think he's a safe play either way if Dragic plays or doesn't, because overall, I mean, he's getting solid minutes, and he has that upside, and he has that matchup tonight, and he's at a shooting guard position that's, fairly iffy, and you could say, and I think with guys like Matthews and Felton right around him, I'm curious to see his ownership tonight, and I like him a lot.
Right. And as you sort of look through the 4K and under guys, there's not much there tonight. I would probably stay away from going that low. I don't really see many good options down there.
Yeah, me either. I mean, the only guy that I can maybe think of as an honorable mention for a hopeful lineup is Norman Powell. I mean, as a punt play, 27 minutes on average over the last 5 games. If Lowry sits, some usage would shift around this backcourt. And I mean, 25 plus DK points in the last 3 games, but 3 more favorable opponents.
Right.
So, moving over to small forward, and this probably has to be the ugliest position of the night, as it usually is. But I don't know. Power forward's pretty ugly too. But looking at some injury news, Kawhi Leonard probable tonight. Look for him to give it a go. A guy I'm not really playing just because the blowout concern. I don't see him playing. Maybe 25 minutes. I think is a good estimate for him, because they're going to be careful.
Right. I want him to play so I can fade him. I guess is how I'm looking at that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Giannis is the guy for me tonight.
Yeah, I think of him and Wall, they're kind of vying for sort of the highest ceiling of tonight. Obviously, we talk about it every slate he's on. He has that crazy upside no matter the matchup. So, yeah, definitely a guy I want to get in there in both tournaments and cash tonight.
Yeah, and he's kind of been coming down a little bit to earth. I mean, yes, he's 33, 49, 41, 32, 17. But now you push that 9,000 price tag, and you become a little bit more criticized for just those low 40 games and those high 30 games.
Right.
So I'm hoping that keeps some people off him. I don't think it will too much, but Giannis just comes in as easily a guy I'm plugging into most of my lineups tonight.
Right. Like, yeah, you're not going to be happy when he scores 17 points,
Yeah.
17 fantasy points. But I think this is more a process over looking at the last little sample.
Definitely. And then you get kind of into a range of Gordon Hayward, Rudy Gay, Luol Deng, Otto Porter. And there's reasons to like all four, and there's reasons to not. And I think your comparison to the slate being the Bradley Beal of slates.
Yeah.
This is a situation. I think Hayward is intriguing because I don't mind the matchup. Going to be a little bit up paced, and then you got Utah who's fighting for a playoff spot, so you kind of take that into consideration. And I mean, Hayward's at a price tag where 35 is certainly reasonable for him tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, Rudy Gay's been pretty mediocre this year, but I think this is an interesting matchup with Washington's style, and I think this could be a game where he sort of gets some steals or makes some big plays. I think this is a kind of like a stylistic game for him that fits.
Yeah, and the matchup's solid. We've been targeting small forwards against Washington most of the season. They struggle on the perimeter. I mean, if Gay can knock down some buckets, I like him a lot. And I like him as a play to keep this game close. Like, if you're playing tons of Washington, maybe you toss in Gay instead of paying up for Boogie or Rondo. So,
yeah, an interesting way to get a piece of that game and a guy with solid usage, right?
Yeah. Luol Deng, he's kind of a guy I'm keeping my eye on. I like the matchup for him. His price has come down a bit because he's been a little bit up and down lately. But he has some rest. He is playing the Lakers. If Dragic sits, a little more usage goes to him. So I don't mind him at that price, especially at small forward on DK.
Yeah, interesting player. In play for pretty much all formats for me, I think. Probably stick to tournaments, but I think he's actually a pretty safe option with this matchup considered.
Yeah. And I think, because Otto Porter's right there, you more rely on him in cash. He's been a little bit more consistent, averaging 29 fantasy points over the last 5 games. And the minutes have been higher, and Beals has been a little bit up and down. He's also coming off the back-to-back, which is something to consider. But now we jump into the fun Memphis team that's been making, March DFS really interesting. And you got Matt Barnes, you got Lance Stevenson. Barnes is definitely the preferred play for me right now.
Yeah, it's just way easier to trust what Barnes does. I mean, Lance, I don't know if the experiment's totally over, but him having that retro, looked like he was the star high school player in a few of those games, just taking it to the hole every time. But I think that's pretty much done, but obviously he does have reasonable upside for his price still.
Yeah, I definitely like him a lot. And I think if I'm sitting anywhere, it's going to be Porter and Barnes in that mid-range. Because outside of that, there's really, not a lot to like because Tony Allen's minutes have come down a bit. And outside of that, oh boy.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there.
So really, you don't think we're glossing over anyone below? You think?
No, not really.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. Power forward, we can move on. And this is a night where injuries and concerns of that nature kind of make it an ugly position because Cousins, you're looking at a guy who I think is going to have the questionable tag on him for the rest of the season because there are talks about him having foot surgery and stuff like that going on out in the offseason. And then George Karl already said he's going to be resting guys down the stretch.
And we did forget to mention Derek Williams with Porzingis out. Obviously, he becomes mega usage for what they use him for when guys like that are out. So he's in play. He's cheap on DraftKings. So
yeah, playing the 4 against Dallas, that's a great matchup. You should be able to grab some easy rebounds because they struggle in the bottom 10 in that category. So I definitely like that call. We would have talked about it with Porzingis, so whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We're good.
But up top, I still think you consider Cousins, probable, but I still think there is a little general concern from you there, especially in the late game.
Yeah, and I think tonight I'd just rather risk it with Giannis than sort of deal with Boogie tonight. But both. He's in play, obviously.
Yeah, I think he's a great GPP play, but his minutes have come down a bit. Even though he's dominated games, he's only played 28 in the last two, and I don't see him playing much more right now. I think he's just going to be kind of on the wind down.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at other options, Draymond Green just got out of a triple-double last night, just missed with one assist away, and he was really pushing for it at the end of that game. You saw it, but he did not get it.
I mean, he's pretty much taken over right now. Not over Curry, but I mean, he's an intense dude, and the fantasy points are showing it right now. Like he's gunning for this record, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's anecdotal, but it's also like you can see it pretty clearly, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of the only Warriors guy I'm keeping an eye on tonight. Because he's had success against Utah. There's still a decent total, and he's still kind of the better price for me. And he's at a position that's pretty weak.
Right.
But
yeah, I do really like him tonight, even with that perceived bad matchup.
Yeah. Outside of that, you got Paul Millsap. I think is a solid GPP play as always, especially with his defensive upside. I mean, you look at that Bulls game, only shot 4 at 12, 11, 11, but 6 blocks and a steal. I mean, that's what this guy does. So even when he doesn't shoot the ball particularly well, and he rebounds and grabs defensive stats, and I'm always all over players like that.
Yeah, you're a big Millsap guy. We know.
I know. I love Millsap, man.
Don't hide it.
He is underrated.
Aldridge, again, we talked about that.
A lot of concern is there. Big time.
I don't necessarily trust that, so I'm probably staying away from him tonight.
Yeah, I think I'll drop myself down to Dirk if I'm paying up in that 7K range. And Dirk's coming off some back-to-back games in favorable spots that should keep his ownership lower than where it has been during that hot streak. But I mean, definitely a matchup he's going to be going up against a Knicks front court of Lopez and Williams now. I think it's pretty favorable for him. I definitely don't mind him tonight.
Right. Derek Favors is someone that's kind of like this Utah team is kind of intriguing. Again, there's a lot of matchups like this where I don't necessarily love it, but Vegas is giving them a pretty good shot tonight. So obviously, I'm going to try to fit in some Utah players where I can.
Yeah, home game against the Warriors. They're going to have to play up pace just a little bit, but still it's more the Warriors coming down in pace. Yeah, I don't hate the matchup. I think the Warriors, just their style of play kind of creates fantasy points opportunities for many of the opposing positions. And I just think all those Jazz guys are certainly
in play.
Play because they're priced in matchup. I don't mind it at all.
Right.
Looking at some other guys, Porzingis, we mentioned him. He was going to be a solid play tonight, but questionable or doubtful with the shoulder issue there. That means Derek Williams is going to come into play. Zach Randolph, he's questionable tonight. He hopes to play, and I would like him a lot if he does. Still a little bit of a concern if he just plays below 30 minutes, but the guy's averaged 19, 5, and 2 against Denver this season, and usually Memphis big men against Denver have had pretty solid success.
Yeah, he's a guy, if they sort of announce he's going to play a little later, his ownership might be down tonight. So definitely a guy you want to keep on later and see how they play that.
Yeah. One guy to take a look at, I think he's going to slip under the radar, is Gorgie Dang. Clippers have been not so good against power forwards of late. Dang's kind of always a guy who's in there for rebounding, and lately he's been dishing out. I mean, he kind of gets up in that 5 assist range every now and then, kind of heightens his upside, but at that price tag, he's still pretty cheap. I like the total. I like that he's in a weaker spot tonight as far as yeah, I'll be taking a look at JaMychal Green tonight if Randolph sits, just sitting at that 5K price tag. The guy's been right around 25 minutes per game over the last 24 points per game, fantasy points. And if Randolph sits, he's going to take a tick up in usage. And against this Denver front court, I think he's kind of the only option in that 5K range that I really like.
Right. I think he's one of those guys you're looking at on this Memphis team that has a pretty solid chance at good usage.
Yeah. Jabari Parker, he's kind of a guy who's going to probably fly under the radar. A safe cash game guy tonight. I'm not quite sure the upside's there, but at a weaker spot, I don't mind him. I think 25 to 30 fantasy points is pretty likely in this matchup.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I just like that game. So any piece that you can get in that game, I'm gonna be for tonight.
Yeah. But the Bucks power forward I'm looking at for tournaments with some upside, with some value, John Henson. He
Ooh.
definitely could come crashing down to a halt tonight because that's just what these types of players do, and that's what Jason Kidd does. But 20, 26, 25 minutes over the last 3 games, you can never trust a Kidd rotation, which is why he's tournament only. But if he gets out there for 25 minutes, man, he's definitely has the upside.
And I mean, obviously he's not a 3 block per game guy, but I mean that's part of his game. It's not totally fluky, you know?
Oh, I think he is a 3 block per game guy.
Oh
I
wow.
disagree.
Okay.
I think he's one of the top shot blockers when he's out there.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah, he's a guy defensive wise I'm a big fan of.
Okay.
So yeah,
All
point
right.
taken, Mr. Russell.
Whew. Never step on John Henson's shoes.
Moving over to
Jason's gonna come knock me out.
he,
No, that's fair. I mean, I guess I don't mean he's bad, but I also don't think he's gonna get that many per game. But I guess we'll see. Maybe he'll get 5 tonight.
all right. Well, okay. All right. We'll figure something out off the show. We'll revisit this situation, this game log when Henson blocks 6 tonight.
All right, I'm in.
Looking at center tonight, it's pretty top heavy, and really all 3 of the top centers are in great spots. Looking at Whiteside and Towns and DeAndre Jordan. The contrarian probably being DeAndre Jordan just because Towns, his usage in his matchup, Whiteside going up against the Lakers, his ability to put up 40 in just 25 minutes, even if it's a blowout, makes him a safe play regardless.
Yeah, Whiteside and Giannis are the 2 guys that I'm looking at for higher priced options. So he's definitely someone I like a lot.
Yeah. And then Towns, great matchup against the Clippers. They struggle against centers, 28th in rebounding. I mean, the guy's just been an absolute monster of late. And I think, if you're playing guys like Paul, you're banking on that game to stay close. I think Towns is a guy who just kind of has to find a way into your lineup.
Right. And DeAndre Jordan in that tier, he's going to be the contrarian play. I think most people are going to be on Whiteside and Towns tonight, but I think for good reason and good process as well. So I think Jordan's an interesting contrarian guy, but I do like the other 2 more.
Yeah, definitely. Looking cheaper, you might be drawn to the Marcin Gortat big game that he had against Sacramento. 27-16, 2 assists and 4 blocks, 36 minutes. The 36 minutes is something I definitely don't see duplicating there. But I mean, the guy's probably in a solid matchup anyway. I'm not expecting 60 again because we remember Beal and Porter were out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, it's not going to run through him like it did that last game, but yeah, intriguing. Yeah. Always intriguing against Sacramento.
Horford, safe cash game option tonight. He's the guy who just quietly sits under the radar, and he also is just a guy who never seems to get too high in price. And at 6,400, Toronto's hasn't been great against centers of late. I definitely like Horford at that price. Not a lot of upside in this matchup though, but maybe he's definitely a guy who's in play for me.
Yeah, definitely in play. Not great, but solid option to throw in there.
Yeah, I think, for the price considered, if you're going a little bit more balanced, he's worth a look.
Mm-hmm.
But Nikola Jokic, he's a guy whose minutes have been trending back downwards. Well, as we've been accustomed to this season, they're all over the place as usual. Like the matchup, Nurkic is out tonight with illness, so he's a guy to always consider in GPPs. He's a guy who can take advantage of this week in Memphis front court.
Yeah, no, definitely like him. Always like Jokic. Even, I just like the guy. So good play tonight, and Nurkic is out. So definitely a guy you want to throw in tournaments.
Yeah. Valenciunas here, 5,100. I mean, still the minutes haven't been quite there yet. Still sitting around that 25, 26 range. I love the matchup for him tonight, and I think if I'm going cheaper, it's going to be with him.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we saw in that Houston game what he can do, so definitely intriguing for that price.
Yep. Anyone else you're looking at? How much of Willie Cauley-Stein are you taking a peek at tonight?
Oh,
playing well.
95% of my team's probably. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, if Boogie sits, I like him more. I like him either way, but yeah, decent price for what he's been doing lately. I think he's worth the risk at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you look at 29, 28 minutes, and I think with Boogie kind of taking a step back a little bit minutes wise, not playing into the higher 30s, Willie Cauley-Stein's kind of opened things up. George Karl getting a little bit more run down the stretch here because the Kings don't have a shot at making the playoffs. So
Right.
let's give some movement to the young guys. But yeah, I think GPP wise, he's looking pretty good.
Definitely.
All right, here we go. Top scorer on the slate. Who are you going with?
You go first this time. I always get the best choice.
All right. I'm going with Giannis, Greek Freak.
Yeah.
Triple double tonight.
I like. You know what? Yeah, no, I'm going Wall. I was going to go with one of the centers, but I totally backed off that. Going with Wall.
Yeah. All right. That's going to wrap things up here at the Minutes to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content.